Today I'm going to be playing around with Openindiana, and this is going to be the first part of a 3 or possibly more part series looking at the various distributions of the Illumos operating system. And as I said, today is Openindiana. Also on deck, I'm going to be Triblix, because it's been a while since we looked at Triblix, and OmniOS. Uh, those are kind of three of the top ones. There's also SmartOS, and if there's interest, please leave a comment below. We can also look at that. That one will be a little bit different. We'll have to set it up a little different. That's really designed for, it's almost like a hypervisor OS. It's really designed for heavy zone usage as a kind of cloud provider operating system. We certainly can play around with it and see what it's all about. So I'm going to set up the VM here. VirtualBox does their nice string detection there on the name. Give it 4 gigs of memory. I'm going to create a drive. And I think 36 gigs should work for what we're doing here. Put it in the right file system. And we will adjust some settings and get it fired up. We'll give it 2 CPUs, the address extensions, and we're going to be using the text installer CD image. We could be using the live DVD, which makes some things a little easier. It comes up with a graphical installer, but I like text installers, so we're going to do it text mode. We may have to install some other bits and pieces after it's up, but that allows us to go through the exercise. Turn off audio, and we want a bridged network adapter with Ethernet 1. So Openindiana I'm not terribly experienced with. I did use it on one of my alternate laptops. Well, one of my main laptops I do my work on was out of commission, and it works great on a laptop. So they do provide some of those bits and pieces that make a kind of complete system for usability. Things like Wi-Fi stuff works, which something like OmniOS may not have had the Wi-Fi drivers, for instance, but you wouldn't really be using Wi-Fi on a server. So let me start this up. And we'll switch into scale mode. Let me grow this a little bit, and as always, we're doing scale mode to make it just show up on the video better. And in case you didn't see that, that was the BSD bootloader, which is something new for Illumos. They're all switching there, so Openindiana has it. I don't know. I haven't played with SmartOS recently. But OmniOS is also moving there in their latest and greatest. So because I am US and speak English, we'll do the default keyboard layout and default language. As I said, live DVD might be easier for some. I prefer a text installer. We're going to select option 1 for an installation. And this is very reminiscent of Solaris. We get screens with F2 to go through. And we're going to use the whole disk. And whole disk EFI. We'll call this in case we want another one. And we're going to manually configure the network so we can give it a static IP. And we are in the United States and Central Time. The F2 to proceed, very, very handy. So now set up root password and a default user, or a first user account. And we get some basic information here. Presumably if we had more disks, we could do a mirrored root pool, which again, if you're doing something in production, probably a good idea. Like I said, when I get my new server up and running, it'll probably have a mirrored root pool. Um, and I'm excited to get that up and running. And I see eBay has some good prices on Xeons that are, a couple revs old, so 2014 era Xeon CPUs, and get a motherboard for it, ECC, because I really need a better storage server, and ZFS was great for that. Just the mess that my file systems are in, having to add disks and bits and pieces. All the problems ZFS was designed to solve. And again, my new server probably going to be running OmniOS, and we'll go into that maybe a little bit more in the video on OmniOS. So Openindiana's, it looks like their goal, and I haven't read any of their mission statement or anything, is to provide really kind of a general purpose system. It would feel as much like Solaris, right? It can do everything okay, right? So it's the kind of one size fits all, and that's good in a lot of ways. But you compare that to, say, OmniOS, which is really specialized for servers, Triblix, which is specialized for people like me who like kind of retro look and things that make sense to people who've been doing this for a while. So Triblix makes sense, and Triblix has some nice things with sparse zones, as well, or something like SmartOS, which has a very, very specialized use case as a hypervisor of sorts. But you can run KVM machines here in Openindiana and OmniOS. You can also use VirtualBox in either one of those. Triblix as well, you can use VirtualBox. I don't think it has KVM yet. It also doesn't have Linux zones. I don't think Openindiana has Linux zones, but do correct me if I am wrong on that point. And that's the other bonus here, using the text installer. It's a much smaller image, installs less right out of the gate here. As for my preference, some of the things that they all roughly do the same thing, and we'll look a little bit into some more of the details here. But I am quickly becoming an Illumos convert. Your choices, say you want a good storage server. Your choices really are Solaris, Illumos, which is, I guess formerly Solaris, or FreeBSD. Maybe Dragonfly you'll include in there. I don't trust ZFS on Linux. BTRFS, I've heard too many horror stories about. So you want ZFS to do a good storage machine. Not a huge fan of Oracle, so getting Solaris from my Spark hardware, I'm probably going to still, Solaris 10 for the later era Spark gear, and obviously the older Solarises for the older Spark gear. But for the x64 stuff, if it's available, Illumos seems to be the pick for me. If it was a desktop machine only, FreeBSD has some advantages, and it would work, as well for a lot of cases, because FreeBSD, you get jails, you get Beehive, and ZFS, of course. But the Linux branded zones really solve some problems for me that makes it kind of a no-brainer to do one of the Illumos that can do a Linux branded zone for a server. So that way I can run some of the Linux software that I need to, and we'll be doing a video specifically on Linux branded zones and some of the cool stuff you can do with them at a later date. And this is chugging along reasonably quickly. We'll take a look and see how they set up the root pool once we boot up in here. But I do like that they maintain the old Solaris style F2 to continue text installer. Not a whole lot of options, right? So you don't get any, hey, pick what sort of sets you want. You basically get the whole minimal image. So it's pretty minimal here with, I think it's a few hundred megs. Let me take a look, see. So 638, so it'll fit on a CD. And this is almost complete. Now, one thing that remains to be seen, and I haven't done any actual benchmarking, is maybe some benchmarks, some head-to-head, application benchmarks, things that I might do. So say, some statistical analyses or some machine learning model building in R, for instance, or scoring in Java between the Illumos and FreeBSD, because both of those would kind of work um, as a host for doing work in R. Both would work really well, actually. And to try to get see if there are any differences. Hopefully there wouldn't be any differences. One advantage of the Illumos is you can run the Sun Studio. I guess it's not called Sun Studio anymore. The Oracle Developer Studio, whatever they call the former Sun Studio. So Sun's compilers, which are pretty good. Um, are they quite as good as Intel anymore? I don't know. So we'll give it an F8 to reboot. Another possible topic, if anyone's interested, leave a comment, is boot environments and how upgrades work in Illumos. Utilizing some of the features of ZFS to, you know, give you rollback points and things. Pretty handy. Um, don't know if we can fill a lot of time with that. Uh, but another Illumos thing, if we want to look at, is the crossbow, the virtualized networking, and how to set up VNICs and things. So I'm going to switch out of scale mode temporarily, and we're going to get that disk out of there and reset. We were booting off the CD there. And then we're back to scale mode. We're going to boot up here. And it's probably going to have to go through, and read all the service descriptions for SMF, which will take a moment or so. Once that comes up, we can SSH in from a terminal to get a better look, poke around, see what's on there, see how to install some packages. So that's another differentiator between packaging amongst the Illumos distributions. So for instance, Triblix uses the System 5 packages, which is fantastic. So old school Stellaris style packages. I think they work great. I'm more for a minimal package management. Openindiana and Omni OS use something called IPS, which is more advanced. Think more similar to package ng on FreeBSD, or Yum sort of RPM style thing where you can. It's handy, right? I won't argue its handiness and have meta packages to say, I want to go install this, have it compute the dependencies, and bring everything down. Triblix has something called overlays, which I think are kind of the next step to be able to say, here's a task, give me everything for that task. And then SmartOS uses package source, which is also pretty cool. But you can use package source on any of these others, right? So the package source should work kind of out of the box elsewhere. Let me see if we can get in there yet. Yeah, it's not quite up yet. Yep. So take a look at our pool. CFS list. So we can see the data sets created. So we get our root, our var is separate, and of course our export home and our user are all created as data sets. So no compressions enabled by default. Not a problem. We can turn that on for data sets if we need to. Take a look at our kernel messages. Nothing, nothing too interesting there. Obviously picked up our CPU correctly. So what else can we look at? So our network link is up. Let's see about installing some packages. Um, First thing we may want to do is get the graphical environment up. So, if I remember this correctly, they call it slim install for some reason to get the graphical environment up. It's kind of a pseudo package. So, passing an NV to install, what that'll do is tell it to be verbose, obviously with the V, and the N is to do kind of a dry run. So don't install anything, just say what it's going to do. Because it would be nice to have show off the graphical environment here. Openindiana uses the Mate desktop, so you know, GNOME, slightly older GNOME. In that way, it's most similar to official Solaris from the Solaris 11 ilk or Solaris 10 without CDE. Having their Java desktop, so a GNOME kind of desktop. Not my favorite. Probably if you want your good choice of packages for window managers and desktop environments, Triblix is probably the winner there because there's packages for everything from I think they even have the AMI WM, so the Amiga styled window manager, black box, open box, all those bits and pieces. XFCE, which I really like, as you can see, I'm running it here. And you see IPS has some overhead, right? So it's got to bring down its catalogs, all its metadata about packages, build its database. So there we go. And, IPS was used by Solaris 11, OmniOS, and Openindiana that I can think of. So it's got to pull up 480 packages. So we can fire this off in the background, and hopefully it won't take too long. If it does, I might just pause the video for a second, and I will get some coffee. See what that's going to install. And we'll get another session open there. Okay. So that looks like it's going to put the desktops on. We get GDM. We get some services here. So that's what we want to do. So that may take a moment or two to download everything. So you see here I used ifconfig, and that's force of habit, right? So let me get back over here to root. I can type my passwords correctly. So we have our interface here, our virtualized interface, but it's being modern Solaris, right? So Solaris 11 style. We need to use the link admin and the interface admin. So here's our physical interface. And here is our interface here with the address. And you can set this up for the v4, v6, etc. These tools I'm growing to love. Again, when you've spent 20 plus years using ifconfig to do your interface configuration, it takes a little bit of getting used to. But once you master the link administration and the IP admin commands, so we have all these various bits and pieces. But let's create a VNIC. we now have a VNet created. So that's pretty cool. Um, so this comes in really handy when you're doing a variety of virtualizations. So one of the power here, I love SimH for doing, um, retro, uh, all the deck stuff, etc. This is super handy. This makes a lot more sense to me in many ways than the ton tap and creating bridges and stuff to have a single command to go create uh, your linked VNet. So this is chugging along at a very slow speed. So I am going to pause right here. I'm going to have some coffee, and we'll come back and get the graphical environment up. Okay, we are back from installing that. I'm going to drop the guest editions on here, and we'll reboot it just for good measure. Probably not necessary, but might as well want to. Put that on there. And we'll do this here. And note how the System 5 package is just fast and easy. So after this, that's kind of how you install packages out of their own repository. Let's add the package source packages from Joyent, because Joyent with SmartOS has a whole long list of good packages. So let's show how to set that. Let's go through the exercise of setting that up after we reboot. Fire a reboot there, and hopefully we'll get disconnected and everything will go fine. And we'll switch out of scale mode, so hopefully we'll be able to bring up the desktop environment. So it boots up pretty quick once you've gone through that first go round with getting SMF going. Seems to work pretty well. So this is why I need I need a new server, get faster storage, and do some stuff with Fiber Channel. So there we go. And as usual, I am doing, kind of bitmapped X over the wire here, so it might not be the speediest thing, but I doubt it put the client stuff in there. So hopefully that'll. Sometimes it takes a couple of these things to resize correctly. Takes a second. We'll SSH back over here, and let's get package in with the Joyent. So here we've got the mate desktop. Not my favorite. Is what it is. We're pretty light on applications at the moment, but that can certainly change. Let's install a package from here. We'll install Emacs just for good measure. So what we need to do is get the package source bootstrap, and we're just going to use this to install pre-built packages. We're not gonna do any building, just in interest of time. So let's get the bootstrap from Joyent, and they're the people who make SmartOS, and they have a big set of packages that most of them should work here. See if I can remember this URL. that's pulling down, and notice how Joyent's a bit faster for their repos than Openindiana was. But again, they've got a larger presence, so I can't fault Openindiana for their lack of bandwidth. And you see we're not, yeah, we're hitting a meg in download speed there. Okay, so we got our bootstrap. And take a look at where this goes. So yeah, so it's going to put everything into opt local. So let's probably want to preserve there. So go and do this. So we get Perl, we get some other stuff. We get a GCC 4.9, which works, and it puts our package in cache there. We get opt local. We have a bin and an S bin. We should add those to our path. And so now we have package in. So since we installed Emacs, let's take a look to see if they have any of the other good editors here. So again, it's got to go get its catalog there. So we're going to want to install Elvis. So now we have our lightweight VI clone. Let's see what other useful stuff we could look for. Search for SimH. Hey, look at that. We even get a moderately recent, so that's from December, copy of SimH. So pretty cool. So you can use the SmartOS packages here, which is pretty handy. And then we can also obviously use package source to build things. You see we now have our Elvis file, or binaries there. What else can I say about this? We've got our desktop environment up and running. Let's see. Trying to see where it's picking up the mate desktop here. Yes, that's... Okay, so there we are starting... yeah, that's the X session. So we don't want that. Let's we'll stay en route there. We'll go over here. And make the that's better. So we'll do X and RC. Get another terminal here, and set my path. So this, obviously, we're sticking around here. This would go into your profile, your startup script to set the path correctly. And XFC might be too much. Let's search for OpenBox. So it's got to pull a bunch of stuff down. But while we do that, let's look here at head user. So if you see here, we have user GNU. And you'll see some standard things here, right? So it looks like they've provided both the GNU user land, or some portions of it, with the Illumos user land. So let's say grep. So now we have the two different versions of grep. So we have the Illumos, so probably that dates all the way back to, you know, AT&T, since it's Solaris, and we've got the more recent GNU grep. So you have both of those, and that's incredibly powerful. So if we look over here, we also have directories in OpenWin, and a lot of the stuff is just maintaining the old Solaris directory structure and bits and pieces. So unlike some of the other things, you now get these things, instead of being in user x11 bin, they're now in user OpenWin bin. So some file system layout differences. Let's see. So OpenBox is now complete. So we can install our alternate window manager there. So if we find OpenBox here, and it's there. So not bad. Let's see if we can get OpenBox to start up. We're going to get rid of that. And we'll probably want the path. So that should now be written. Let's see if this works. Crossed fingers. And let's see if it works. And that looks like OpenBox. So let's wait for VirtualBox to do its thing. And we get our OpenBox window manager. So using the joint packages makes things a lot easier. What else do I really have to say about this? I guess I've rambled a little bit here and went down this detour of switching out window managers, which is probably not essential, but I figured it might be interesting to look at. So we've talked about the different user lands available. some of the stuff that's there, some of the differences in where some of the software is, um, how to install packages. That's kind of it. Do let me know in the comment if you want to see a video on things like zones. Probably needs its own video. Crossbow, maybe its own, but a pretty short one. Um, yeah, so no Kimu right now. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, well, I will, I guess, end this at this point. So again, to put the conclusion on this, this is the first part, Illumos. Hopefully, I'll be a little bit more together when I look at the next part, which will be um, probably Triblix or OmniOS. So I guess that's it for now.